April 18th, 1942, Richmond, California, Kaiser Shipyard, No. 2. The morning fog still clings to the San Francisco Bay, rolling low and grey between rows of half-finished hulls like breath over steel. Arc welders crackle to life one by one, sharp white flashes cutting through the mist. The smell of hot metal, oil and wet timber hangs in the air. A siren sounds. Not an air raid warning, not an alarm, a work shift. On the edge of the slipway, Henry J. Kaiser stands with his coat collar turned up against the cold wind. He is not a naval architect. He is not a shipbuilder by training. He is a construction man, roads, dams, concrete poured fast and cheap. And that, many experts believe, is precisely the problem, because the ship taking shape in front of him is not elegant. Its lines are blunt, its welds are thick, its finish is rough. A Liberty ship, and the men watching from the sidelines, U.S. Navy inspectors, maritime commission engineers, visiting British officers, do not look impressed. One of them mutters under his breath, "She looks like she was assembled, not built." Kaiser hears it. He doesn't turn. He checks his watch instead. "Launch her," he says. Section 1. Built ugly, built fast. When the war at sea began, the Allies were bleeding. In the North Atlantic, German U-boats prowled shipping lanes with terrifying efficiency. Merchant ships burned from stem to stern. Crews froze in the water. Entire convoys vanished into the dark. By early 1942, the numbers were brutal. More ships were being sunk than replaced, and for Britain, an island that lived or died by sea traffic, that equation meant starvation. The United States had shipyards. It had steel. It had manpower. What it did not have was time. Before the war, merchant ships were built like works of craftsmanship. Riveted hulls, skilled shipwrights, long timelines. A year, sometimes more, for a single vessel. That model was already obsolete. German submarines didn't care about craftsmanship. They cared about tonnage. So the Americans made a decision that stunned traditional naval designers. They would stop trying to build perfect ships. They would build enough ships. The Liberty ship design, officially the EC2SC1, was deliberately simple. Based loosely on an old British tramp steamer, it was slow, boxy, and unremarkable. 11 knots on a good day, minimal armor, minimal refinement, and it was welded, not riveted. That alone caused outrage. Welding was faster, yes, but many engineers distrusted it. Cracks could propagate. Hulls could fail catastrophically. Some early Liberties did fracture in cold seas, sometimes breaking clean in two. Critics pounced. "These ships are unsafe," one naval architect warned. "They won't last," said another. "They're disposable," a British observer scoffed. Kaiser didn't deny it. "They don't need to last," he replied. "They need to arrive." At the Richmond yard, the process looks less like shipbuilding and more like industrial choreography. Prefabricated sections, bows, sterns, midships are assembled inland, moved by crane, and lowered into place. Welders swarm the hull like ants, working in teams. Some have never seen the ocean before. Many are women. Others are farmers, mechanics, clerks trained in weeks, not years. One of them, Ruth Hargreaves, wipes sweat from her face as she finishes a vertical weld along a bulkhead. She is 23. Before the war, she worked in a department store. Now she builds ships. "They told us it didn't have to be pretty," she says later. "Just strong enough to cross." Across the yard, a Navy inspector shakes his head as he watches. "This isn't how ships are supposed to be built," he mutters to a colleague. The colleague watches another hull section drop perfectly into place. "It's how these ships are built," he replies. By noon, the hull is complete. By evening, machinery is installed. By dawn the next day, Paint is sprayed, not carefully, just quickly. On April 19th, less than 5 days after the keel was laid, the ship slides down the ways into the bay. 5 days. The British observers stare. One finally asks the question everyone is thinking. How long will she last? Kaiser turns to face him at last. Long enough, he says, and there will be another one behind her. What Kaiser understands, and what the submarines soon will, is that the war at sea is no longer about sinking ships. It is about whether sinking them matters. And for the first time, the answer is beginning to change. July 1942, North Atlantic shipping lanes. The sea is calm, deceptively so. A German Type 7 U-boat rises slowly to periscope depth, ballast tanks hissing as water drains away. Inside the cramped control room, Kapitänleutnant Ernst Vollmer adjusts his headset and peers through the eyepiece. What he sees should have made him smile. A convoy, fat, slow merchantmen ploughing westward, their wakes stretching long and straight. Escorts are visible, corvettes, a destroyer, but they are spread thin. The Atlantic is vast. Targets are plentiful. Vollmer issues the order without hesitation. Attack position. 1 torpedo, center mass. The torpedo strikes just aft of midships. The explosion rolls across the water, orange flame licking up the side of the ship. The merchantman begins to list. Another success, another line in the logbook. But something about this sinking feels different. Vollmer waits. Usually, the aftermath brings chaos, ships scattering, escorts racing towards the blast, panic rippling through the convoy. Instead, the other ships hold course. They close ranks. Within minutes, the gap left by the sinking vessel is filled. Vollmer frowns. It is subtle, but unmistakable. The convoy does not behave like one that believes it is running out of ships. Back in Berlin, tonnage figures still look promising. Sinkings remain high. Headlines boast of victories at sea. Admiral Dönitz assures the High Command that the U-boat arm is tightening its grip. But the balance has already shifted. Because while German submarines are sinking ships one at a time, American shipyards are launching them by the hundreds. By the end of 1942, the United States will produce over 2,700 Liberty ships. Not planned, not theoretical. Built, launched, crude. They come off the ways at an almost absurd pace. At Richmond, at Portland, at Baltimore, at New Orleans. Some yards launch a ship every few days. Others improve further. The record, set by the SS Robert E. Peary, stands at just over 4 days from keel laying to launch. The shipbuilders themselves barely have time to remember names before the next hull slides past. A foreman at Richmond jokes, "If you blink, you miss one." The joke spreads, so does the reality. By mid-1943, Allied planners no longer ask how many ships have been sunk. They ask how many more are ready, and the answer keeps growing. Vollmer learns this the hard way. In August, he attacks another convoy. 2 hits. 1 ship crippled, another burning. But the escorts react faster now. Depth charges fall sooner. Air cover arrives unexpectedly. Long-range patrol aircraft circling where none should be able to reach. Forced deep, Vollmer listens as explosions hammer the hull. He survives, barely. When he returns to base weeks later, his report is brief. Enemy convoys continue despite losses. Sinkings no longer disrupt traffic. No one wants to hear that, because it implies something unbearable. That the submarine campaign, Germany's most successful strategic weapon, may be losing relevance. Not because U-boats have become ineffective, but because their success no longer changes outcomes. In Washington, the shift is understood clearly. A Maritime Commission analyst runs the numbers late one night, pencil tapping against a ledger. Sinkings per month, launches per month, net gain. For the first time since the war began, the curve bends decisively upward. The United States is replacing losses faster than they occur, And that is before considering repairs. Liberty ships that take damage but do not sink are patched, refloated, returned to service. Some sail with visible scars, plates mismatched, welds rough, paint uneven. They are not beautiful, they are alive. A British officer visiting the yards remarks dryly, "In the old days, we would have scrapped half these ships." An American supervisor replies, "In the old days, we would have lost the war." The psychological effect on the German crews is profound. Submariners are trained to believe that every sinking matters, that tonnage is life or death. Now they watch ships burn and reappear weeks later. Same shape, same silhouette, different name. Rumors circulate. They have endless ships. They don't care if they lose them. They build them like trucks. The rumors are not wrong. The Liberty ship is not meant to be a marvel. It is meant to be a statistic. Each individual hull is expendable. The system is not, and that distinction breaks something fundamental in naval warfare. Because attrition only works if loss hurts. By 1943, loss no longer hurts the Allies. It merely activates replacement. Vollmer writes in his private diary after another patrol, "We sink them, and they come back, always more, always steady. It is like bailing the sea." He does not exaggerate. By late 1943, U-boat losses spike sharply. Better escorts, radar, sonar. Air patrols launched from carriers built on, ironically, Liberty hulls. The hunter becomes the hunted. But even before that turning point, the war at sea has already been decided. Not by a single battle, not by a single innovation, but by a decision made in shipyards far from the ocean. A decision to trade elegance for output, perfection for pace. Because the Liberty ships do not need to win fights. They need to exist in greater numbers than the enemy can destroy. And for the first time in the war, that condition has been met. February 1943, London, Admiralty House. The room smells of stale tobacco and damp wool. Maps cover the walls. Shipping lanes traced in grease pencil. Convoy routes marked and remarked until the paper beneath begins to tear. Around the long table, British and American officers sit shoulder to shoulder. Faces drawn, eyes tired. For 2 years, every meeting like this has carried the same unspoken fear. Can we keep Britain alive long enough to win the war? Today, something is different. A Royal Navy captain clears his throat and gestures toward a chart pinned beside the map. This, he says carefully, is the monthly tonnage balance. The red line, ships sunk, still climbs. But the blue line, ships launched, has surged past it. Not briefly, decisively. For the first time since 1939, Britain is no longer losing the shipping war. A murmur runs through the room. An American officer, Commander Richard Hall, speaks next. His tone is calm, almost clinical. "We are no longer asking how to prevent losses," he says. "We are asking how to root around them." That sentence would have been unthinkable a year earlier. In 1941 and early 1942, every sinking had triggered crisis meetings. Convoys were delayed, cargoes reprioritized, entire operations postponed because there simply were not enough hulls to move men and material. Now planners begin to think differently. If a ship is sunk on Route A, cargo shifts to Route B. If a convoy loses 3 vessels, replacements are assigned before the survivors even dock. Losses are expected, accounted for, neutralized by volume. Across the Atlantic, at Kaiser Shipyard No. 4, the work continues without pause. The rhythm never changes. Steel arrives. Sections are welded. Hulls slide into the water. Foremen track output on chalkboards, not in months or years, but in days. One chalkboard reads, "Target, 1 ship every 3 days." Someone has added beneath it, "Beat it." The men and women working the lines know the rumors. They have heard about cracked hulls, about ships that fractured in cold seas. They also know something else. Every ship they launch is one that does not exist for a German torpedo, and there will be another behind it. A welder named Luis Martinez, formerly a farmhand from Fresno, pauses to watch a completed hull being towed away. "Think she'll make it, or it?" someone asks. Martinez shrugs. Far enough. That answer, repeated across dozens of yards, becomes doctrine. At sea, the change is subtle, but deadly. German U-boat commanders begin to notice that convoys are no longer breaking apart under attack. Escorts stay aggressive longer. Aircraft appear in places once thought safe. Most unsettling of all, traffic never thins. Sink 3 ships today, and tomorrow there are still just as many targets. Sometimes more. In April 1943, a U-boat pack attacks a large convoy in the mid-Atlantic. They sink several merchantmen, but suffer losses in return. The escorts do not disengage. They press the attack for hours. Depth charges pound the water. Sonar contacts multiply. Aircraft flare the sea with light. 2 U-boats are destroyed. Another limps home. For the first time, the balance of risk has shifted. Because when a U-boat is lost, it is not replaced quickly. When a Liberty ship is lost, it is already being replaced. Back in Washington, the implications ripple outward. The shipping bottleneck, the great limiter of Allied strategy, begins to loosen. More cargo reaches Britain. More tanks reach North Africa. More fuel, ammunition, and food move steadily forward, and planners begin to think bigger. Operation Torch, Operation Husky, Operation Overlord. Each of these operations rests on an assumption that would have been suicidal in 1941, that shipping losses can be absorbed without stopping the offensive. That assumption is only possible because Liberty ships exist in overwhelming numbers. The ships themselves never make headlines. They do not duel enemy warships. They do not fire broadsides. They do not inspire poetry. They carry crates. They carry fuel drums. They carry trucks, boots, artillery shells, canned food. They carry war. And by mid-1943, there are enough of them that losing one no longer threatens the whole. A British logistics officer writes in his diary, after reviewing convoy statistics, "For the first time, I feel the sea is no longer hostile. Not friendly, but manageable. Manageable, that is the word. The Atlantic does not need to be conquered. It needs to be endured. And endurance, the Allies have discovered, is not a matter of courage. It is a matter of throughput." German intelligence eventually grasps the scale of the problem. Intercepted reports speak of unprecedented American output. Analysts warn that sinkings are no longer achieving strategic effect. But there is no answer. Germany cannot build merchant ships at anything like the same pace. Resources are stretched. Shipyards are bombed. Skilled labor is scarce. Even if they could match the numbers, it would take years. Years the war does not have. The Liberty ship program does not make the U-boats obsolete overnight, but it robs them of meaning. Each patrol becomes a gamble with diminishing returns. Each sinking matters less than the last. And that is the most dangerous thing a weapon can become. Not ineffective, irrelevant. Because when speed outpaces destruction, perfection no longer matters. Only continuation does. June 1943. Kiel, Germany. Inside a dimly lit conference room overlooking the Baltic, a group of German naval architects stand around a scale model of a submarine hull. The model is immaculate. Smooth lines, elegant proportions, engineering refined through years of iteration. This is German industry at its best, and it is too late. An engineer taps the model thoughtfully. "We can improve endurance," he says, "if we adjust ballast and streamline the casing." A rear admiral cuts him off. "We do not need better submarines," the admiral says flatly. "We need more time." Silence follows. Because time is the one thing Germany no longer controls. Out at sea, the difference between the two philosophies becomes brutally clear. A Liberty ship convoy loses 3 vessels to U-boats in a single night. Fires burn. Lifeboats scatter. Men die. By morning, the convoy regroups. The gap closes. Within weeks, replacement hulls, already launched, already crewed, are assigned to the route. No conference, no redesign, no pause. Loss is absorbed. In Germany, a single submarine lost triggers investigations, redesign proposals, political infighting. Production slows as changes are debated. Perfection is pursued, even as the war demands speed. The Americans do the opposite. When a Liberty ship cracks in cold seas, engineers do not halt production. They add reinforcement plates, they adjust welding procedures, and they keep building. The line never stops. At Kaiser Shipyard, a maritime commission official watches as another hull slides into the water. He turns to a visiting Navy officer. "These ships aren't meant to be perfect," he says. "They're meant to be replaceable." The Navy officer nods. "And the men?" The official looks back at the yard, at the thousands of workers clocking in for another shift. "The men," he says, "are replaceable too." It sounds cruel, but it is not indifference. It is planning. Crews rotate. Training pipelines feed continuously into the fleet. Losses are expected, mourned, and then, without hesitation, replaced. The system does not deny human cost. It refuses to let that cost paralyze action. By late 1943, the consequences reach the highest levels of Allied planning. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, reviewing logistics for the coming invasion of France, is asked a simple question. What if the Germans sink a quarter of the shipping during the build-up? Eisenhower does not hesitate. Then we will still have enough. That confidence would have been unthinkable 2 years earlier. Now it is arithmetic. Liberty ships have changed the war not by fighting, but by making risk tolerable. If a landing craft is lost, another arrives. If a transport burns, cargo is rerouted. If a port is damaged, floating docks are towed in. Nothing stops. Everything bends. German commanders begin to sense the shift, even without understanding its full cause. Reports from the Atlantic grow grim, and enemy convoys show no reduction in size despite heavy losses. Sinkings fail to alter operational tempo. U-boat crews report declining morale. One captain writes bitterly, "We fight ghosts. They vanish and return." He is closer to the truth than he knows. Because the enemy he faces is not a ship, it is a schedule. The Liberty ship program reaches its peak in 1944. Shipyards that once struggled to launch a hull in weeks now do so in days. Standardization eliminates delay. Components arrive pre-cut, pre-measured, pre-approved. The ships are crude. Some sailors curse them. They roll badly in heavy seas. They are slow, but they sail. And they sail in numbers no navy has ever seen. When critics complain about inefficiency, a maritime commission memo responds bluntly. A ship that is never sunk is inefficient if it delays delivery. That sentence encapsulates the entire philosophy. Efficiency is no longer measured in longevity. It is measured in arrival. Across the Atlantic, German industry collapses inward. Bombing disrupts concentrated factories. Skilled workers are killed or displaced. Production schedules shatter because there is no redundancy to absorb shock. Every loss is catastrophic because every system is brittle. The Americans watch, adjust, continue. By the time Allied troops land in Normandy, the shipping problem, the problem that once threatened to end the war before it began, is no longer even discussed. It has been solved, not with brilliance, not with genius, but with volume, repetition, and an acceptance of imperfection. The Liberty ships do not win medals. They do not receive salutes. But without them, no tank reaches the front, no soldier eats, no invasion sails. And without understanding why speed mattered more than perfection, Germany never stood a chance. Because modern war is not won by building the best thing. It is won by building enough things, fast enough, that destruction becomes meaningless. December 1943, North Atlantic. The sea is slate grey, heaving under a low winter sky. Wind lashes spray across the bow of the SS John W. Brown, a Liberty ship riding heavy with cargo. Trucks chained to the deck, crates of ammunition deep in the hold, fuel drums lashed wherever space can be found. She creaks as she climbs a swell. Inside the engine room, Chief Engineer Samuel O'Connor wipes condensation from his goggles and checks the gauges again. The engine is loud, rough, unforgiving. It vibrates through the soles of his boots. Liberty engines are not elegant machines tools. They are simple, triple expansion steam, old technology. And that is exactly why they are used. If something breaks, it can be fixed with basic tools. If a part fails, another can be fabricated on board. The ship does not need perfection to keep moving. A lookout's voice cuts through the wind. Periscope wake, starboard side. The convoy reacts instantly. Escorts surge forward. Smoke pots bloom. The merchantmen do not scatter. They maintain course. Speed unchanged. A torpedo hits. Not the John W. Brown, but a ship 2 positions ahead. Flame erupts. The blast rolls across the water. O'Connor grips the rail as the shock wave shudders through his hull. For a moment, he expects orders to abandon ship. They never come. Instead, the convoy closes ranks again. The gap disappears. The John W. Brown sails on. 2 hours later, another torpedo strikes closer, this time beneath the Brown's stern. The explosion lifts the ship bodily, slamming it back into the sea. Steam pipes rupture. Lights flicker. O'Connor is thrown against a bulkhead. Alarms howl. Damage reports flood in. "She's leaking!" Rudder response sluggish. Engine still turning. Still turning. That is enough. Temporary repairs are made while underway. Pumps run constantly. The ship lists slightly, but she holds together. Days later, battered, scarred, patched with plates welded in the open sea, the John W. Brown docks in Britain. Cargo delivered. Mission complete. No headlines, Marvin. To event. No one records how close she came to sinking, because she was never expected to survive. She was expected to arrive. This, more than any statistic, defines the Liberty ship's role. They are not designed for immortality. They are designed for probability. Each hull represents a roll of the dice, but the Americans roll them thousands of times. If some fail, it does not matter. The average moves forward. German naval intelligence receives fragmented reports of damaged Liberty ships continuing to operate. It makes no sense within their framework. A damaged ship should be withdrawn, repaired carefully, preserved. The Americans do not think that way. A damaged ship is a ship that still floats, and a ship that floats still contributes to the war. By 1944, the effect compounds. Liberty ships feed not just Britain, but entire continents. They sustain the Red Army through Arctic convoys. They support the Mediterranean campaigns. They enable the build-up for Normandy. The beaches of France are supplied not by brilliance, but by backlog. Thousands of tons arrive every day, because thousands of tons were launched months earlier. The system works because it assumes damage. It assumes failure, and builds past it. A German naval officer, captured in late 1944, is shown Allied shipping figures during interrogation. He studies them silently for several minutes. Finally, he looks up. "This was not a contest of tactics," he says quietly. "It was a contest of endurance." He is right, but endurance does not come from willpower alone. It comes from preparation. Back at Richmond, shipyards begin slowing production. Not because of failure, but because the bottleneck has moved elsewhere. Ports, crews, coordination. That too was anticipated. New shipyards open, training pipelines expand, harbor infrastructure grows. Every constraint is treated as temporary. Every solution assumes the war will continue. By the time the U-boat threat collapses entirely in 1944, the Liberty ships have already won. They did not defeat submarines directly. They defeated scarcity. They made it impossible for the enemy to sink ships faster than they could be replaced, and in doing so, they rewrote the rules of industrial war. On May 8, 1945, as victory in Europe is announced, hundreds of Liberty ships sit idle at anchor, their job finished. Some will be scrapped within years. Some will sail into the 1960s. None were meant to be remembered, but every one of them proved the same truth. In a war of attrition, perfection is fragile. Speed is decisive, and quantity, when sustained long enough, becomes a weapon no torpedo can defeat.